Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Can we get a creepy Innawoods story thread? Haven't seen one in a while.
I have one. Was too tired last night to post it, but seeing this thread is still going, here's mine. I was 23 years old driving with my girlfriend from the beach. We were on our way home from the coast and it was a 3-hour drive home. We left after sunset. I was driving and she fell asleep after we got on the highway. We were the only ones on the road. The area was pitch black with 0 street lights or house lights. I was getting fatigued, so I drank a Red Bull I kept in my glove box in case I ever needed it. After an hour, I was feeling better. I wasn't as tired as I was before. I had to go to the bathroom though, so I tried to find a rest stop. After 30 minutes of driving, I could not find one, so I decided to pull over and just pee on the side of the road. My girlfriend woke up when we ran over the bumps on the shoulder of the road that are meant to wake up sleeping drivers. She asked me if something was wrong, and I just told her I needed to answer nature's call. She laughed and I stepped out to take care of business. I went into the bushes just a few yards away from the car. When I walked back to my car, I noticed something dripping from under the car and a strange odor. I thought maybe my car was leaking oil or engine fluid, so I shut off the engine and took out a flashlight to check. It was blood dripping from a mangled animal under the drive shaft. I couldn't make out what type of animal it was because its body had been torn and tangled in the drive shaft. As I got up to get back into the car, I noticed 2 eyes blinking to the reflection of my emergency lights. It was about 10 car lengths away, staring right at me. When I looked into my car through the back window at my girlfriend, I saw her looking right at the eyes, then at me. She had been staring at the eyes while I was inspecting the car. I shined my flashlight at the animal and it looked like a moose, except it only had 2 legs. Its head went down and began licking the ground. I kept watching it from afar and noticed it was licking the ground once, then taking a few steps towards us, then licking the ground again. I realized it was licking the blood that was trailing from the mangled animal under my car. I was scared and in shock. I couldn't move. I looked at my girlfriend and she was in the same state. When the moose came within 5 car lengths away, I noticed it only had 2 legs, no rear body, and a slightly longer neck than usual. Its body was more human. It had a chest and hips, but I couldn't see any arms. Then after one last lick on the ground, it paused and stared at us. Suddenly it let out a howling noise like a scream. Off in the distance, we could hear the same sound coming from the trees. The animal started sprinting at us. I finally got the nerve to run into my car, but the moment I closed my door, we felt a jolt come from the back. The thing rammed its antlers into the back of my trunk. My girlfriend began to scream and I started the engine. Suddenly, the back window shattered and its head was through the rear window. I slammed on the gas as the animal started biting. The last thing I saw in my window was the animal running after us. When we reached the next town, my girlfriend and I got out of the car at a gas station and looked at the damages. The trunk had a few scuff marks and there was broken glass all over the back seat. We didn't know what to tell people what we saw, or if they would have just thought we were crazy. To this day, I still remember that animal. I have come to realize whatever I saw that night was not a moose, but something to the likes of no animal I have ever seen.
Hey/K/this just happened. I have my entrenching tool beside me because my guns are at my grandpa's, so I'm letting my 2 battle buddies outside to go pee, Yorkshire Terrier Spike and a Shih Tzu Gino. It's snowing right now because I live in Canada. So they run outside and Gino is freaking out because it's his first snow. Spike is just trying to move around because he is old. I go outside in slippers to whistle and bring Gino back in. We have lots of coyotes that frequent my backyard, immediately after I click and open this thread. I keep whistling and then I hear a whimper bark. I go outside and Gino is stuck in the trampoline netting. The netting is in a circle and he has somehow been trapped. I go out, only with a hoodie, sweatpants, and slippers, to go get him out. I bend down to get him and I get this really weird feeling that I am being watched. I don't really care about it. Anyways, I put Gino into my arms and carry him back towards my door, which is also closer to my fence, which is closer to the forest. He starts freaking out and trying to squirm out of my arms. I grab him closer and put him back in the house. I head to the door and hang just outside of it. I call for Spike and look for him, but my left eye is blinded by my outside lights. I cover my left eye with my hand, and I see this humanoid shape that is putting its hand on my fence, while partially behind a tree. My heart just dropped into my stomach, and I felt really, really cold. I whistled again for Spike. He slips right past my foot at full speed into the house. The forest behind my fence is very weird. It doesn't have any path in it, and I don't have any path in it. I have somewhat close neighbors, but nobody goes in there. This is scary /K/. This just happened.
I work on a federal government property, and there is a gym available for the employees. It's a nice gym in a big building that was repurposed from something else a while back. I normally get off of work around 7 to 8 p.m., and sometimes at 11 p.m. I almost always end up working out alone. During the fall and winter months, it's dark outside and the area around the gym is very dark. The gym has a b-ball court that's separated by a little hallway, and the lights are always off in it. The gym itself is well lit but gives off super creepy vibes. Working out alone is kind of a challenge as the place feels that wrong. One day, still daylight out, I'm on a stationary bike blasting AC/DC through earbuds and someone walks up beside me and stops. I take out the earbuds because I figured they wanted to talk and I look over and no one is there. Instantly freaked out but don't stop working out. Similar events happen over a few-month period. Sometime later, I'm working out with a coworker in said gym and we're swapping camping stories. He's Croatian and has removed, and he mentions that not much freaks him out, but that the gym bothers him. I mentioned that I thought I saw someone next to me one day, but passed it off as reflection in the mirrors. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "Oh, you've seen it too?" We stopped talking that night and just kind of finished working out. Since then, I've brought up the subject to at least 3 other people that I know work out at that gym at weird off hours, and all 3 have admitted to seeing the same thing, and have mentioned that they each know at least 1 or 2 different people, each, that have seen weird shit there, including when the gym has multiple occupants. I don't really believe in ghosts. But there is some shit there, and whatever it is really, really bothers me.
Not a strictly Innawoods story, but a good one if you ask me. That popped up a while ago, was aviation in Afghanistan. Never personally experienced anything myself, but I can tell you this weird-ass story I heard from some Apache guys. Be patrolling for insurgent activity. Pilot spots a column of men walking up a hillside and calls it out. Gunner pans over in white hot, nothing visible. Pilot insists he can see these guys. Gunner switches to black hot, nothing, then back to day mode. Sure as shit, he's looking at a column of men with assault rifles walking up a hill, completely oblivious to the Apache watching them. Remember, they were close enough that the pilot was able to see them with his naked eyes. Leader of this column stops and points to a rock, finally seems to acknowledge the Apache by looking at them while he points. Column moves behind rock and just vanishes. Gunner goes back to thermal, no indication of a cave or anything. But he does notice a cache of mortar rounds concealed under a camo netting, which they destroyed.
Be in 2008, B16. I love to be in the woods and hunt all the time, so I know all the sounds and sights of the woods. I guess I was wrong this time and many more times later. So my dad owns a hunting club, and it's in the middle of nowhere. Like at least 50 miles from the nearest Walmart, so you get the idea. The deepest parts of the land extend 100 miles from the nearest paved road, so it's deep as shit. Well, anyway, I was deer hunting by walking in the woods and tracking them down, so I'm roughly 75 miles from the nearest Walmart, so I'm deep as shit, and only a few people hunted that area. But the deer in that area are big. Alabama deer are average 150 pounds, but these fuckers were 200 or 300. So I'm on some heavily used game trail that is like 10 feet wide. So I'm following this fresh deer track, but I saw something that stopped me. There were other boot tracks, and I know I'm the only one out in the area because we have a sign-out system. So I thought maybe poachers and I get to do a Mozambique drill on them. Well, I followed the tracks until I see some smoke from a campfire. I get close and it isn't a campfire. It's a goddamn bonfire. I was really getting jumpy then. I don't see anyone around, and there's no gear or anything around. I finally get close enough to see the bonfire up close. There's deer, rabbits, and coyotes roasting whole. I was gonna nope out of there, but I heard someone approach. So I hid in some bushes and saw him. This beast was a man with tattered clothes and wearing a deer's skull with the blood of fresh kills. He saw me and yelled at me in some language I've never heard. Then he ran to the bonfire and started to throw the burning logs everywhere, and at that point I noped out of there because the woods were starting to burn. A forest fire ensued, and the fire and the beast slowly chased me out of there. I ran faster than I ever did back to my truck. Just as I got to my truck, the beast looked down at me from a ridgeline with fire behind it, and yelled at it once more till I took off in my truck. I got back, and one of the members that hunted in that area asked me if I saw anything. Told him I'm not going back there. He asked me if I saw it. Told him yes, and he told me he hasn't gone back either. Eventually I went back after 3 months, and mysteriously the woods regrew completely with no signs of fire. But every so often I see smoke and a light of a fire when I'm leaving at night.
Be bedded down in a campsite with family. Acres of wood just behind the tent. Laying in cot. Have a knife close at hand. Lay awake longer than the rest of us. Hear shuffling outside near the table. Something brushes against the side of the tent. Sound seems pretty loud for a small critter. Spooked. Better check outside with a knife. I can't sleep after hearing those sounds. Zip out of the tent into a moonlit forest. Can't see anything. Somebody left an empty hot dog container on the table. Deduce it was probably a fat camp raccoon. Never find out. Next night. Sweat condensed under me from last night. Trouble sleeping. Ears tuned to the slightest sound. Hear brushing against the sides of the tent. I think I see movement. Try to ignore. Sound gets really loud and distinct. The ground sheet is moving. Something is crawling under the tent. Several things are crawling under the tent. Look at the floor. Hear the squeak of a mouse. I touch a mouse through the ground sheet, feeling the soft little bastard. It scurries back off with its comrades. Watch the direction it goes in. There was a big old rotted out tree just behind the tent, and half a dozen holes around the base and roots. That wasn't so bad. .png.
Go into the woods miles from civilization and camp. You'll magically be afraid of skinwalkers again, at least if you know the sounds of the forest and can identify weird shit happening in the woods. Be me. Be out on Florida dikes in Indian land. I only have a knife. Stargazing.jpg, hearing noises across the dike. It's nothing.jpg. The moon is full. Everything cast in absolute darkness or bleached white sand color. Hear the sound of branches cracking on the other side of the dike. It's nothing.jpg. Hand on knife, looking at stars and shit, waiting for a meteor shower to start. More branches snapping and water sloshing from the other side of the dike. There are 100 miles of swamp and nothing on that side of the dike. Hey son, looks like the meteor shower is hidden by cloud cover. Ya dad? You bored yet? Let's pack up and head in the truck. Okay dad, pack up our shit in under 5 minutes. Weird ass sounds increasing all the way. God damn it, skunk ape.
Goddamn, I know that feel. I posted this on /x/last night. But fuck /x/. I'll repost here. Decide to go camping with girlfriend in middle of nowhere, of the Appalachian part of Ohio. Take a half-day's hike up a random trail. See no one all day. Isolated mountainside. No civilization for miles. Still, a nice la-di-da day in good weather. Innawoods with my girlfriend. Pitch camp. Make dinner. Eat. Between chopping wood and other camp tasks, we're wound down and ready for sleep by sundown. Point of 40, Smith & Wesson, high point, don't laugh too hard, sitting right next to my head, safe and no round in the chamber as I sleep in the tent. Wake up around 2 or 3 a.m. Feel like someone's about to peek in through the top of the tent. Deep at night in the woods, so no bird song, expected. Some nocturnal insect sounds, expected. Patter of the occasional acorn falling, expected. What sounds like someone felling a tree? Wait, what? 2 or 3 a.m., middle of nowhere. No one spotted it all day. And this no one is chopping a tree down? Nope.jpg. Bolt upright, gun in hand, offhand on slide, ready to make the firearm operable. Survey area through the vent hole of the tent. See nothing. Stay in that position until around 4:30 a.m. Too tired at that point. Go back to sleep until dawn. Pack and leave at dawn as expected. We went back a few months later, but it was too hot for her, and she suffered a minor heat-related injury. So we pulled out early and went home. She confided in me later that she was happy we had to leave before sundown, because last time she didn't sleep all night because she felt like something like Slender Man was watching us all night. Hearing that and my 3 a.m. woodsman sounds kinda had me spooked in retrospect. But about sounds, yeah, if you know what normal is and hear something off, totally fucks with you.
Me and friends out on the sticks of North Florida, and they say we should spend the night in abandoned warehouses. KK, sounds fun. No guns, but knives of all sorts in our gear and in pockets. We drive out there in Buddy's Cherokee and park it on a busted-up road. Get out and bypass the gate by climbing through it. Too small a hole to drive through. We get there and turn our phones on silent. Light up a little fire in an open room. Pull the garage doors down and barricade the doors against curious bears. Sun goes down and we clear out spots for sleeping bags, break out the master's ravioli. Turn off all lights and leave the fire as out-only light, the smoke going through busted skylights. 1 o'clock and we exhaust the fire with some dirt, retreating into the sleeping bags and tossing our cans to the side. Maybe 2:30 and we hear a clank. On the door that led into there we barricaded with some shelves. Everyone wakes up, out with their knives as another bang hits the door. It's just a bear, just be loud. All of us start laughing at the various loud sounds we make, hushing the silence. After a few minutes, we stop, as did the banging, though we stopped only because it sounded like some man-reptile screaming out there. That's no bear! Everyone keeps their lights onto the door and the busted window on the other side of the large room. One of my friends yells, dropping his flashlight, all of us turning and shining it onto the long window as the furry thing runs from the busted glass. Thin, lanky, white fur. Too thin and bipedal to be a bear, stinks like shit. We can only hear occasional heavy thumps as the thing walks around, peeking into the window and fumbling with doors before 6 o'clock. We tactically run back to the Cherokee, driving as fast as we can back home. Still never found out what it could have been. Something doesn't live here naturally.
Not an Innawoods story exactly, but you get the gist of it. Live outside of Austin, Texas. Most of the poorer or affordable housing gets more and more wooded the further away you get from downtown. Spending time at my friend Justice's house, he had like 3 to 5 people living with him and his dad. The house looked like total shit, complete with a roofless garage across the yard we'd always goof around with toy guns in. It's his birthday, so we decided to go exploring. We moved past this skate park we used to play around and drink beers at. We were like 14 or 15 at the time. Get to this weird concrete structure. It had no windows, no roof, just foundation, and a whole bunch of small rooms shaped eerily like cells. Start to spray paint on everything, set off fireworks, smoke cigarettes. It gets too quiet. Stop everything. At about 1:30 a.m., Justice tells me to shut the hell up and look where he's pointing. I look down the corridor at the end of the cells, towards what seems like a doorway that should open up to a field of trees and grass. Instead, all I see is stars, and a pair of eyes and glistening slobber. They looked like human eyes, but they were huge and empty. Yellow teeth, drool pouring out of the mouth. Looked like the Cheshire Cat, but disgusting and gross. Just stares at us for 5 minutes. We leave, and we hear howling and screams of people, multiple people, dozens of different screams. Book it back to Justice's house. Kids at the skate park follow us back, asking us what the hell happened. Some white kid with visible track marks in his elbow said we saw a chupacabra. I want to say we didn't, but I have no idea. The kids are pretty cool. One is named Jordan, the other one was named Rudolph. Justice's dad comes outside, asks us what is going on. Justice tells him what happened. His dad goes inside, opens up a cardboard tube, and reveals a slightly rusted Mossberg 500 cruiser with what looks like human teeth tied to the pistol grip. His dad was probably on drugs at the time in retrospect. Gets to the skate park, claims to see it, shoots in the air. Police called, everyone plays dumb, hides the gun, everything. Justice moved to Cleveland about a month later. Never see skater kids again. I'm debating on whether to go back or not.
Be a bunch of Illinois runners doing a summer camp in a woods in Colorado. We know the entire backwoods area by now with all the running we do. Always had our coach on the same spot yelling, "Pick it up!" or "Stop being slow," as we did laps through the woods. Not a soul for miles. Get a night off when our coach decides to go into town to go to a strip club probably. We're hanging around in the woods, hitting shit, knocking trees down, etc. All of a sudden, someone sees eyes in the woods, tells us. We tell him to fuck off. Badass runner starts chucking rocks in that direction. I shine my flashlight trying to scare it off. See a pale human with longer than normal limbs, its clothes tattered. It rushes towards us. We start to nope out of there. It keeps pace. All we hear is our coach's voice saying, "Pick it up." Slowest guy on the team out runs the runner who won state in 800 meters that year. Stop being slow. You're slower than molasses. We make it to the campsite's facilities. We brace ourselves against the door a good portion of the night. Coach comes back, has to take a dump. Finds all his runners hiding in the bathroom. "I can't leave you alone for a few hours without you idiots getting into trouble," we tell him. He calls us wussies. Our faces when our coach made us run through that area the next day.
Here's a story that's a bit weirder. B-car camping in a woods with my girlfriend in western Washington. I heard there's a nice waterfall nearby, so I decided to check it out. Get lost on some dirt roads up in the mountains. Decide to pull over and check out some abandoned logging areas because they look cool. Walk past some heavy steel gates designed to keep trucks out. See the wasteland. The stacks of debris were all at least 15 feet high. Walk for about an hour across the logged-out field until we get to the forest. Be in a forest now, on some dirt roads, through the trees. No signs of anyone being here recently. Everything is silent. We kept walking for half an hour until we saw another steel gate off the side of the road. It's at the mouth of another trail, but it looks like there's a clearing at the end of it. We decided to go around the gate and see where the path leads. We hike for a few minutes past stacks of thin logs, eventually come to a clearing and see this. It's some sort of wooden Stonehenge structure in the middle of a clearing, behind a gate, in the middle of nowhere. My girlfriend is freaked out and doesn't want to go any further. I'm slightly weirded out. Everything feels eerie. We stand at the mouth of the clearing for a bit, staring at the structure and the pole in the center until something moves. We stood in shock for a moment, then I decided to check it out. I run to the center of the circle and see just how big it is. The wooden ring is at least 8 feet tall and 60 feet across, and the pole in the center is about 50 feet high. The top of the pole is covered in long multicolored ribbons, which I believe are what I saw that was moving. The base of the pole is wrapped tightly in bundles of cloth, like they had tied something up in them, going about 6 feet up and several inches deep. I cut off some of the bundles to bring back, but decided to ditch them in the woods. The whole time everything feels too spooky. We hightail it back to the logging road and don't look back.
Be 13 or 14. Got my first 30-30 handed down from Gramps. Gramps decided to take me into the woods for a 2-night camping trip, hike onto a ridge and follow it all the way up to the top of a pretty big mountain near my town. Hit the top of the mountain after 4 hours of hiking. Decide to make camp. Gramps is always constantly scanning and backpedaling on trails looking behind me. Set up camp, cook some beans and bacon. Gramps takes little walks around the area that the fire lights up. Would shush me every now and then. Tells me to go to sleep. Wake up next morning and start packing stuff. oddly quiet in the area. Gramps tells me that we are cutting the trip off early. He doesn't feel good. Say okay. On the hike back down the ridge, notice that it is different. Ask Gramps and he says we are going a different way. Ask why and he says, don't worry, it's safer this way. The 4-hour hike hits the bottom of a canyon and we take a break for lunch. Gramps focused on the rear of where we just walked. For lunch, I ate like 3 granola bars and had a can of soda. Gramps didn't eat anything and hasn't drank anything the entire way back. Starts getting really quiet. Notice we are in a very dense pine area. No birds chirping or squirrels running around. Me and Gramps start moving through the heavily wooded area, but this time he tells me to get my rifle off my back and put a few shells in it. He has his old school 6-shooter out with his rifle on a sling. Tells me to head north. Start brush busting and not looking behind me to make sure Gramps is there. Hear him shout from my 2 o'clock, and I froze in fear because it sounded like help. Start making my way towards the shout. Trees getting closer and closer together. More shouting, but it seems to be getting closer. Sounds odd. Sounded like him telling me to go to sleep. First thing that pops in my head is in the movie Predator when it repeats what everybody says. I shout out our code word if you ever get lost. Get a return of help sleep. Feel a hand grab me and out of panic rifle a shot off. Gramps grabs my backpack and starts dragging me out of the wooded area. At this point, I'm crying and ashamed of being shot in an accident. He tells me to not cry. It will only make it worse. Hear my own crying about 40 yards off to the 9 o'clock of us when we stop. Gramps looks at me and says, see what happens when they hear you being weak. The sun starts to go down, so we find a nice open area to make camp so we aren't fumbling through the woods. Have one of those 1 million candlelight hand spotlights and bust it out just in case. Planned on killing coyotes at night. Hear howling, but not from a coyote and no wolves in my state. Gramps is still clutching his handgun and scanning the tree line. Hear something scrape down a tree like claws hitting bark. Spotlight the thing and see one of them and shine back at least 4 sets of eyes. Gramps cracks a pistol round off and we hear help sleep, as shit is going wild on that side of the forest. Gramps says to let it loose and I start working my lever like I'm John Wayne. I run out of ammo before Gramps as he is still pacing his shots. Hear rustling on all sides of the forest. Gramps tells me to get my rifle ready as he starts pulling what little firewood we had and making a semicircle with it around us. Tells me to pull up all the shrubs and put them on the wood. He leaves a 5-foot wide opening in the circle and tells me it's our way out. Lights semicircle on fire and it's pretty bright for the first 30 minutes. Circle starts to dim down, and that's when you could see something pacing just far enough for eyes to register the shape. Spotlight is dead because I left it on when I set it down. I start crying again and Gramps tells me to man up. They like it when you are weak. Day breaks, and I get woken up to Gramps shooting in the air, and once again I panic and rifle a shot off into the woods. We pack up and start hiking out of the canyon we ended up in. Gramps tells me I did good and not to tell my mom what happened. Gramps was a World War II vet and an overall hard dude. He yells me what happens when you're afraid of the dark and they smell it. Had a ringing in my ears for a couple days afterwards. He tells me to not go back in that area unless you have some help when you go camping. That's about it among other things he told me about that day before he died.
Please tell us more. I want to hear more about Operator Grandpa.
Here's the only other weird one I have of him. Be with Gramps and cousin patrolling the ranch that was pretty close to the area where spooky shit goes down. My cousin and I are about 10 or so, about 3 hours into patrolling the ranch, making sure no squatters were out there. Cross dry riverbed. Gramps disappears into the brush, leaving me and my cousin alone in the riverbed. Spend a few minutes throwing rocks at shit and end up throwing them at each other. Hear something up across the riverbed which was about 40 feet long. Sounded like a coyote, just louder. Shrug it off and start throwing rocks in that direction. Thinking it was a coyote trying to lure us, howling goes away for a few minutes. Continue with the waterhead type of activities we were doing prior. Hear the same howling type of noise again. Look up and see a man in the brush staring at us but barely visible. Long black hair and dark skin. No shirt and had what looked like a cowhide skirt. Remove Hamburg.jpg. Howling and screaming gets louder, and me and my cousin start crying. Noise is gone randomly and man is not to be seen. We then get to the other side of the creek bed and sit there with our sticks that look like guns ready to fight it out. The same man is there down the riverbed about 100 yards but fully visible. Take aim with sticks and cousin makes a shooting noise. Man locks directly on us and we both freeze. Hear what sounded like a landslide to the hill behind us and turn around. It's Gramps sliding down what was essentially a cliff on his ass yelling, "Look at the ground. Look at your feet." Grabs us by our arms and drags us back to the truck, and while saying "look at the ground" the entire time, gets us into the truck and says that we were lucky and all this shit. My cousin pissed himself and I had some Choco in my drawers. Before Gramps died, I tried to ask him about what happened when I was with him at the ranch.
West Virginia, circa early 90s. Grandpa is on a trip. Grandma is home with the dog. Dog is annoying and hated everybody. Seriously, dog was the SRS of the canine world. Quiet night, new moon, middle of the valley. Grandma hears a loud whistle off in the distance, able to hear it over the TV. Dog starts yapping. Grandma goes on the front porch. It's got a gate for the front door and a gate on the railing. Dog yaps a few times. Grandma hears the whistle a second time. The pitch goes up and down at random. It sounds somewhat closer, but she can't really tell. She goes back inside and locks everything up. Dog is still on the porch, barks a few more times. 2 hours pass. Whistle returns. It's much closer. There's a second whistle on the other side of the house. Grandma sees a light out in the darkness, a few miles away. It flickers with the whistle. Dog is going ballistic. Hairs on Grandma's neck stand up. Grandma gets a bad feeling in her gut. TV is now off. Grandma grabs Grandpa's trench shoddy. Grandma doesn't go in the woods, you neckbeards. Grandma barricades the doors. Whistles return. She runs for the attic, climbs up and barricades that shit. She falls asleep with a shotgun in her hands. From what my grandmother told me, there wasn't a single bird singing the next morning. It was also possibly the foggiest morning West Virginia had ever seen. Her story ends on a particularly nasty note. She took a look out one of the front windows and saw one of the rocking chairs on the porch had been shattered. The dog wasn't there, just a blood stain and a whole lot of gouges in the wood.
I got one that is weird, 13 or so, summer, so out hunting with my best friend at the time. Decide to go away we hadn't been before. After walking a few miles, we came to a clearing. Walking in the clearing because it's a little bit of a breeze. No breeze under the trees. Clearing seems to be a backward 7 shape, about 100 yards wide, a couple 100 yards long before it turns to the right. As we need the turn, here is a strange buzzing noise. Get close. Noise gets louder. Go around the turn to see the rest of the clearing. 50 or so feet ahead of us, in the rest of the clearing, is around 50 dead cattle. Millions of flies everywhere over summer, bloated corpses. We were upwind, so until we got close, we couldn't smell the dead rot. Decided to GTFO because we didn't know WTF killed that many cattle. Cut into the woods to go around the bodies. Little ways past the bodies, we find a road path cut through the woods. Follow it back to the road, figure out where we are from a few signs we see. Walk back home along the road. Get back to Buddy's home, tell his dad. Dad calls Sheriff's Department to report it. They say they'll be out in the morning to take a look. The next morning, they come by and get us so we can show them where it was. Get back to the clearing from the road and by following the road path through the woods. All the bodies gone. The only reason the deputy believed us was the blood and fluids left behind on the grass and the tons of flies everywhere and the smell. What really worried me later was realizing whoever moved the cattle did so because they saw us back there and watched us.
What the actual hell, Anon? Where was that?
Oklahoma. I used to live in Jones, where my buddy lived when I was 13. Jones is a little town, right now has 13 square miles and about 2,500 people. It was smaller back when I was 13. Jones is roughly a 35 to 40-minute drive northeast of Oklahoma City. He lived outside of town, so that's why the sheriff's department instead of town police. Looking at Google Maps now, the area that it was in is gone now. However, you can still kind of see the spot where it was. My best guess is that it was at what is now Northeast 57th Street and Joseph Drive. The road path we followed out of the clearing through the woods led us to Northeast 50th Street. He used to live off Henny Road up closer to Wilshire Boulevard. We had walked about 2 or 2.5 miles in what used to be uninhabited woods out there.
Hiking alone in Colorado because none of my friends wanted to come and wanted to stay in the cabin, get drunk and watch mangoes. Have a 9mm my trust Mosin, and a full kit including a single tent and a thin sleeping bag. Get a good pace going. Sun starts to decline. Find a nice little camping area in a little grove of trees with a spot of sky showing through mushrooms and rocks littered about. No signs of anybody ever being here. Smells earthy and nice. Build a small little campfire enough to cook food. Start unpacking my tent when I hear something in the woods. Very, very soft, but it sounded like staying. Look around. It's nothing but the sounds of bugs and birds. Shrug it off. Put up my old trust one-man tent and pull out a can of beef stew. Set it next to the fire with some holes in the top. Sit on my ruck and pull out a book, just enjoying the woods. Hear something shush again. Lift my head. Reading? Just as soft this time. Very hushy and mysterious. Hair on my arms and neck stand up. I slowly reach for my Mosin resting on my lap. Fred, came from the woods, almost hissed out like something in there knew I was very unsettled. My gut is churning and bubbling, legs are jittering, brain is screaming out that whatever it is, I don't want to be near it. I slowly stand up. I have more than one pack. I pull up my Mosin. That tent is old. I need a new one anyway. I turn, working the action of my slide to chamber around. The fire is small and ringed by rocks, it won't spread. That voice erupts from the woods in a harsh leaving. I bolt, tearing ass down the trail. Something crashes through my tent after me, howling in rage. It's 3 miles to my truck and I'm not stopping. Sprinting down this trail, rolling over rocks that are in the way, hurdling shrubs, just a mad sprint for safety. A mile down the trail it catches up to me. Hear it land with a thump a few meters to my right, having jumped down from somewhere. I draw out my cig while running, Mosin in my left hand. Turn and see this huge thing battering away a bush, grotesque looking. Was extremely furry, a large white star on its belly, had these weird cloven feet, and had short, stubby little horns like a young deer's. Yell out a challenge and starting blasting away at it, my little 9mm rounds streaking through the air. I see 3 rounds impact. One on its right chest, one in the belly, and one just skims his ribcage. It's pissed. It roars again but stopped, allowing me to regain my lead. Thoroughly freaked out, panic is setting in and my legs are pumping. Mosin in one hand, pistol in the other, just thundering down this trail. Finally see the parking lot, only truck there is mine. The sun is setting, giving more shadows than I would like. It's catching up again. Jesus Christ, it was fast. It is within eyesight, blowing through obstacles like nothing. It screeches out, "Living!" Twist to my left, Mosin out in a one-handed hold, shoot without looking. The 54R finds purchase somewhere in the leg and it tumbles. I've shit myself, urine running down my legs, my body is trying to shed weight like mad. Slam into my truck door, open it with panicked and shaky hands. Truck turns on, I squeal out of the parking lot, finally make it back to the cabin. I'm covered in shit and piss.
Summer after high school, hanging out with friends at waterfront camp that one of my friend's grandparents own. Chilling out in the cabins, swimming, sailing, etc. 5 girls and 2 other guys besides me. Gets dark. We're watching Resident Evil in one of the cabins and laughing at how shitty and overdone it is. Suddenly the power goes out. Look outside. The rest of the camp has power. Girls all freaking out. One of the guys is a string bean but is really good with guns. The other is a tank but doesn't know too much about shooting. Leave the big guy with the grills and go outside with a fellow comrade. We had both brought our guns for target shooting. I have a nugget, and he has a Rossi lever action. Go outside to check the fuse box. Something has obviously been messing with the fuses. Components are broken and wires are slashed. Friend turns on a flashlight and points into the woods. Oh shit. GIF. Dozens of pairs of eyes reflect the light. Just staring, pure white, from the woods around the cabin. Tell friend to go back inside and get everyone ready to move to the boat. Nearest safe place, figure those things don't like water. For a few minutes I just stare out into the woods. They stare back. hear friends burst out the back of the cabin. Friend yells at me to run for it. A unified howl erupts from the woods. Sounds like the horde in Left 4 Dead. Run and shoot. Don't even look to see if I'm hitting anything. Friends pile into a sailboat. My friend takes a turn holding off the screaming horde with his lever action while I rig the sails. The gunfire seems to deter them, but we can't tell if we're doing any damage. Time to cast off. My friend takes the tiller and we shove off as I fire off the stern. The things come down to the water's edge but don't touch the water. We anchored about 100 yards offshore and my friend and I took turns watching the beach. The things stalk the beach until about 6 a.m., then peace out. We never tell a soul.
Camping on a small island. Cooking dinner late at night. A man walks out of the woods, dressed in a super outdated ranger uniform, says howdy and asks to see my site registration ticket. I give it to him and he thanks me and scribbles something in a notepad, welcomes me to the park and gives me a map showing where the ranger station is, tips his hat and disappears back into the woods. The next morning, search the island from top to bottom, go to where the ranger station is. The only thing left is the crumbling, weed-infested foundation of a building. Never see the ranger again.
Meh, I've posted this before, but what the hell? Be me, going Innawoods for the weekend, rocking a Flecktarn parka because it's cold and rainy. Have a holstered RIA 1911, various common campsites around. I decided to make my own. Hike for a few hours, clear a spot of ground, lay down the bedroll, string up tarp overhead via a few close trees. Getting dark, make a fire. Even got my guitar out. Realstalker.jpg. Everything is going okay. Suddenly hear a far-off scream. Ears perk up. Start to hear yelling. Gunshot rings out. Oh shit.png. Another scream. Yelling continues. Another gunshot. Extinguish fire. Put on headlamp. Holster muffati. 5. Keep hearing screams and yelling as I do so. Follow the noise. It stops. Eventually arrive at what I presume to be the source. Nobody around. Not a soul. See the wrecked campsite. Small splatters of blood here and there. Camp gear strewn everywhere. Nope. Out of there. Get back to my shit. Pack up. Hike back down. Drive back home. Pick isn't mine, but pretty close to what I saw. I still wish I had brought my camera with me, or at least my phone. I just know there are going to be fools who call this fake. Did I walk in on the aftermath of human hunting?
Be last fall. Redneck buddies and I decided to go in a woods, truck full of dumbassery, and only one Nova 12. No fear. Drive deep into the rural asshole that is southern Ohio. Pile out of a truck down the road from an old abandoned farm. Thick-ass woods and overgrown fields. Legend around the place is satanic cult murdered 3 people there, lol horror movie setting. We get out of the truck, go in a woods behind the old farmhouse. We start dicking around looking to build a campsite, go to take a piss by a fallen down silo, when suddenly sounds from the old farmhouse. Heavy footfalls and deep breathing, rustling commencing. We group up and I throw a rock into the farmhouse. Silence. The 4 of us collectively laugh when we hear a deep groan. Imagine a human death rattle turned to 11. Buddy has the shotgun, gets it loaded. Anybody in there? Hello? You can feel the intent of whatever is inside. We have pissed it off bad. Start backpedaling. We all know this shit is too much. Hear the groans turn into a guttural growl. We hightail back to the truck, 8-foot shadow behind us. Buddy pops off around towards it. This thing is screaming like Burzum. Abort, abort, abort. We get back to the truck, pile in and get the piece of shit started. As we take off, we see the thing on the road behind us. We see the thing behind us and it's keeping up in the distance. We are flipping shit, get into town and we lose sight of it. Never look back. I can honestly say I want to go back with a better loadout.
I know a guy that's as stone-faced and serious as a block of granite. He lived a few years with Navajo and told me and my brothers this story. Visiting an old Navajo man that someone asked him to check up on. Nava Joe, for lack of a better name, says he's happy to see friend, but he shouldn't come around anymore. Skinwalkers don't want me talking to you guys. Whatevs, we'll be back to check up on you in a week. 1 week later. Walk up to the man's house. Bloody boot prints leaving the house. The door opens. Oh shit.jpg, because his balls were replaced with steel, he goes inside. Nava Joe, you in here, you okay? House is completely trashed. Nava Joe nowhere. Last place to check is the basement. Walk down wooden steps covered in blood. Oh, there's what's left of Nava Joe, surrounded by bloody wolf dog prints. Tribal police contacted. This doesn't concern you. It was just a wolf attack. You really should leave the reservation. If it were anyone else telling the story, I wouldn't have believed them.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.